about doing our first in-person event many, many months ago, and had no idea what that was going to look like. And I got on a plane a couple days ago and came out from LA and thought maybe like, I don't know, 4 or 5 people might show up. So you guys have truly just blown me away and made us so, so happy. Probably most of you know a little bit about what we do, but I'll tell you anyway. Bloodletter is a feminist horror magazine, and we try to collectively redefine horror in feminist terms. So we publish biannually, and we publish all different kinds of writing, and we have 20 incredible pieces that we just published in our second issue at bloodlettermag.com. And I have to be honest, I have such deep love for our contributors. They have just shared their hearts and souls in these pieces, and I could not be more proud of the work that we've put out for our second issue. And it's just so incredible that we had our first publication 6 months ago, and now here we are. So yeah, thanks for making this possible for us. If you haven't checked out our website, we've got QR codes over there with our social media, our website, and a support link if you feel so inclined. And something I would be really excited for you guys to see is that each one of our pieces is illustrated. Every issue, we have a featured artist who illustrates every piece in our magazine. We had the incredible privilege for this issue of working with Rylan Jose, and her work is absolutely breathtaking. So I hope you'll visit our site, read all of our pieces, and yeah, just get lost in these beautiful pieces of work. So I want to introduce the members of our staff that are here. We have Anna Laura Falvey right there. Anna is our associate editor, and without her, none of this would have been possible. So grateful for you. Viva Whitman is our spectacular development associate, and actually Viva and Anna were issue 1 contributors. And then Christine Singleton is our incredible administrative coordinator. And we just feel so incredibly privileged to be here with all of you. So we're going to be taking turns introducing our amazing contributors whose work we are so excited to hear read aloud. So I'm going to pass it over to Anna, and we'll introduce our first reader, Claire.
So much. Hi everyone. Thank you all so much for coming out. It's so good to see you all. We have a couple of author intros to read to introduce our beautiful contributors. So this first one is for Claire. Her prose is just as disturbing as it is magnetic. Reading Naomi is akin to staring into the unending, glittering digital void and having the void stare back through cherry red, heart-shaped plastic sunglasses. Claire Orrange is an American writer residing in Brooklyn. She self-styles as a socialite, but really she's just an unemployed, very extroverted doll. And Naomi was one of the first pieces that I read for when we were starting to get in submissions, and it completely blew my fucking mind. It's an incredible piece of work, and I'm so excited for you all to hear it. Please welcome Claire to the stage. And just as a content warning, we're going to give very brief ones at the beginning of each piece. For content warnings, we have some disturbing sexual content and body horror, so look forward to that.
Thank you, Bloodletter. This has just been so special, and thank you to my friends who came out. I see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd. Also, I am employed now. Okay, so this is a story called Naomi. I wrote it as the creative final project for a I was taking on Russian futurist literature. Okay. Naomi, light of my screen, fire of my intellect. In you I have found my muse and myself. In you I have come to understand firsthand the arc of progress along which we all drudge each day. It bends to new heights as you bend to and fro, and we, mankind, may soon be able to walk on the surface of the sun, gilded by his yogi fire, as I am gilded by my proximity to you, Naomi. We herald the machine as the apotheosis of achievement, the sole means of raising our station from the grounds to the heavens. Only you have proved this mythology hollow at its core, haven't you? Or rather, you have shown me, through your daily video gifts, that it is man, or rather man-woman, who may incorporate the machine into itself and render flesh the avenue upon which our forward march may be tracked. I am indebted to you for this, which is to say that I am indebted to myself. The carnal throb within me, which presents itself as first and foremost a curiosity of the mind, needed you, Naomi, to draw itself together into the subversive and innovative genius which I may now lay claim to. You should be proud of yourself. I write to you after I fear our last moment of connection has passed, gone with the wind, as it were. It has been a year, or rather 296 days. Precision is yet another virtue I owe to your hand, since I last saw your beautifully odd face alight upon my laptop. I know not what has become of you in the meantime. I don't know what name you respond to these days. Hell, I hardly know where I shall address the envelope once I've considered my heart and soul sufficiently poured out into these lines. Although, I suppose I do have an unyielding faith in divine providence, divine as the stock market is divine, as the cogs of human progress look like something like divinity, which initially brought you into the folds of my ego. She will deliver these words to you, I have no doubt, for she has no other choice. When I was a boy, I did away with the notion that there was some higher power orchestrating the various fortunes and misfortunes of my life. In fact, the Bible itself contains some rubbish about putting away childish things when one is grown. Some would perhaps feel unmoored and directionless by the loss of this illusory tether, but for me it was an abiding comfort. In the age of camera-based sex work, the old gods are sure to be buried. It is up to us, the men who remain, to seek out new gods to worship, new gods who will tether us once again to the human coil. All of my life, I was an atheist treading water in a vast ocean I could not be bothered to understand. Naomi, when you appeared, it was like lightning struck out on the horizon line, illuminating the primordial fluid in which I had been stewing. The futility of my station was suddenly so clear, and so I set upon the task of swimming out to that spot where you had descended from the heavens, seared into the back of my retina, and re-illuminated in the negative contrast at every close of my eyes. Perhaps I should backtrack and give some specifics so that this letter to you has the comprehensive quality of a manifesto. In fact, my recounting this to you, Naomi, may be just as informative to you as it is satisfying to me. I may be underestimating the extent to which our playtime... slow. Is it working? Okay, sorry. I may be underestimating the extent to which our playtime slowly but surely pulverized that cute little mind of yours into mush, and it would require untold amounts of hubris indeed to assume you, what remains of you, could remember me on the strength of my genius alone. So, from the beginning, with the attention to detail of those damned literary realists, I have long thrown off the ship of modernity with the pushing of my keyboard. It was a balmy spring evening, and I was incredibly horny. During my youth, while I lazed about in my inherited wealth, my sexual appetites quickly became desensitized to the cornucopia of copulation. Do you appreciate my alliteration, Naomi, readily available on the internet? When I was not sating these tastes with flesh and blood women, which was often enough, the only thing that would do for me was the verisimilitude of the camera girl, an agent of my desires who could respond in real time to payments rendered with services exchanged. In one such interaction, I spent $470, paying $10 to Blixter for $20.69 for every quarter swallowed down her esophagus. What fun I had with her, and for such a small price. This vulgar economic equivocation is beneath you, Naomi, I assure you, but it is an unfortunate reality with which all men must contend, that women, even boy women such as you, lack the animalistic need for sex which men possess. Your kind only responds to financial consideration. It's a defect in your code, I should say, one that some miracle man in some lab will surely rectify on a genetic level someday. But until that precious moment, I had and have to content myself with paying camera whores to do their job to the simultaneous pleasure of my loins and plead of my pocketbook. So, I dusted off the computer, typed cybersex.com into the search bar, and in short, there you were, Lily of the Brook, 1927. I will refrain from describing the physical attributes which immediately struck me with the truth of our compatibility. Although your penis must have been one of those things, since it is what makes you a sexual chimera, I knew very quickly, instantly, that you would be the beloved of my life, and indeed the physical embodiment of all the endeavors which have been percolating in my mind ever since I can remember. I knew immediately that I was looking at my Naomi, which brings me to the first act of my generosity, your renaming. Lily is a name weighed down by dead and defeated connotations of purity, of virginity, of new beginnings and sweet smells. The mawkish quality of these things revolts me, not because I do not cherish your lily-white pixelated form or fantasize about the smell of your hair, but because of our digital divide, many of these particularities of sensory pleasure would be forever withheld from me. I could not bear, not at all, the name reminding me with its simple beauty and promise of someone with a past and a mother, of our fleeting and limited capacity to know each other. So, I asked you to kill Lily and replace her with Naomi, a name fit for a cyborg, for $400. And so, you did. This initial action symbolized the beginning of your little life alighting upon the flat rectangle before me. But even the renaming was not enough to purge you of yourself and your will, such that you would be completely rendered my pet project of passion, my thesis, my manifesto, my Naomi. I may be straying too closely to the subtext of my mission, but I feel I owe you my honesty after all of this time. Regrettably, all humans are simply organic matter. While this reality is to thank for the fleshiness of a woman's curves and a creative history that is tirelessly taken up with death and decay and rebirth, I term it regrettable because only that immortal product of cognitive labor, the machine, should be bequeathed to the sons of the future. The brick and mortar of our forefathers is now voiced through the new dimensions of the cyber network, an invention which combines the solidity of steel with the pliability of your luscious breasts, Naomi. It follows, then, that the only way to realize this new world order is through the integration of computer machine with flesh girl boy. Some could say that this intention to make a cyborg out of you was overwrought or simply evil. Cyborgs will bring nothing but pain and suffering, I hear them shout. But is that not the circumstance in which all innovators find themselves at some point or another? When one does away with the old morality imposes the new, as the revolutionary mandate of modern times continually demands, there are always those who do not understand and are fearful. The disrupted palates of those counter-revolutionaries are a cost that must be borne so that real progress may be made. Lily was a casualty in this process, a necessary evil. I need not explain to you that the feudal logic governing relations between the sexes is a thing of the past, but so is that particular brand of monogamy found in the 20th century, which sought to possess the emotional and spiritual aspects of one's partner prior to and in lieu of a physical commitment doomed to fail. You and I have forged new ground. We have shown them that love does not have to look like an economic calculation, a contractual obligation, or even a communing of lost souls rejoined. Love may indeed be a one-way street, a symbolic representation of technological innovation, a continual transformation of the body, while the mind remains as pure and pointed as a bright beam of light. Remember the lightning analogy, Naomi? With this vision, I set out to perfect you and to gratify myself. Hee hee. but that was only the beginning. I then paid for a private video chat with my newly christened Naomi and asked you to how much it would cost for you to deactivate your profile and become my own private cam girl. You were incredulous and named an obscene amount of money, which I readily paid. I was sure to emphasize the ongoing nature of your allowance, that you did not simply run off and away with my initial investment and my dreams of grandeur. I requested that for our first date, you strip the clothes from your back and present yourself to me like a prize sow. I don't know if it's a sow. Was I not entitled to some fun too, Naomi? So I could inspect the goods I had purchased. You happily obliged, although the banal optimism relayed by your face always did seem to hint at the despair hiding somewhere within the murky layers of your interiority. And this stubbornly remained the case, even when I bought a new device with a higher definition screen. As I write, I'm finding myself faced with an ethical dimension of my project that I have not heretofore considered. What did you think of all of this? I weep upon these pages to think of it. I suppose it is too late now to sit with that question for long, but it keeps ringing around in my mind. I have gone soft in your absence. I'm ashamed of myself, as my father would have been. But when one looks back on all of the creative giants preceding one, the distance between themselves and their subject matter continually asserts itself. Shakespeare, after all, was a petty thief who wrote with the language of kings. Naomi, I needed you to provide a blank canvas. I keep getting sidetracked. I will walk you through our time together in a more expedient way. First date. You present yourself to me like a prize. I'm just gonna say cow. Your body caresses my screen with its pale velvety folds, and I shudder and gasp and come. You are wearing a distinct purple necklace which glimmers upon my screen, warping the pixels through which it swims. It hurts my eyes to look upon you. I now cherish that feeling of pain mixed with pleasure. It haunts me that your absence has only brought me one and not the other. Second date. I first share with you my invention, the result of years of my emotional labor and brief consultations with the manufacturing plant, the micro camera. My engineers were paid well for their flawless execution of my vision, but not nearly as well as you were for your flawless execution of my plan. Let us together reread the manufacturing logline. The micro camera is the size of a grain of sand. It comes equipped with high-definition streaming capabilities and a built-in industrial-grade flashlight. A window into the soul. I quite relish the confusion on your face as you, likely, contemplate the delirium of the old man drooling in front of you virtually. I imagine you thinking, does he simply want a pretty young face to nod along absently while he rambles on about this so-called invention of his? But one mustn't spoil dinner with dessert, as they say. In due time, you would be made privy to my plans. Third date. Unfortunately, I think with something other than my head this time. We proceed as we had on our first date, disrupting the tight schedule I had laid out. You owe me an apology for this, Naomi. I seethe with rage when my screen goes blank without having made any progress on my mission. I should have listened to those biblical enjoinments against women, warning of your cruel nature. My semen slicks my keyboard as I berate you in the chat. This I do regret. How romantic that we both acted against our better judgments that day. We draw something untamable out of each other. Fourth date. I propose that you consume large quantities of micro cameras while you yourself are on camera, and I finish this proposition with a flourish. Naomi, my muse, my love, my light, my fire, my balm, This proposal does not go over well. You laugh at me. I end the day quickly. As you fade to black, my hope, my purpose, and my phallus dwindles. I cry and cry that night. I'm not afraid to admit it. I fear I have already tarnished the opportunity to redeem myself in your eyes, Naomi, so I do not hesitate to admit it. Fifth date. You stand me up. I guess I throw a tantrum. I feel indexed into the category of men who punch holes into their bedroom walls out of rage. To admit that at this juncture, I punch a hole into my bedroom wall out of rage. But I do. And that's okay, because sixth date, following my donation of an additional $3,000 to the veritable university endowment of an investment I have made in you, you attend this date with that same bland, deceptive, and yet breathtakingly beautiful smile plastered to your face. I quickly proposition you again. It's just like this. These cameras are so small that your body will hardly register their presence. I lied. You need only consume a cereal bowl's worth, enough to canvas those lovely contours with surveillance footage, which will obviously feed back to my computer. The box of them is already signed and sealed. It need only be delivered to your address. Say the word, Naomi. Say the word. You ask, why would I endanger myself just to do your little science project? What would that even accomplish? I always found it amusing how selectively you applied this fierce, incorrigible will of yours. I cannot explain it in so few words, Naomi. I'm sorry. How could I? You must have faith in me. I know what is best for you. How indeed could I explain art? I might as well detail what I had in mind now that you've long since boomeranged out of my life, surely to return soon. Please. This is the meat of my manifesto, so take note, Naomi. All of the developments in economics, in technology, in politics, and even in art itself have held humans as the raison d'être. Sorry. For example, every increase in manufacturing efficiency or new wave of aesthetic production has sought to be utilized by man, whether to improve his quality of life or edify his creative sensibilities. We are far past the moment, however, in which machines and artificial intelligence have usurped humans as the ultimate subjectivity, that which should be thought of as the lover and viewer to our newly minted status as beloved and viewed. It follows that the integration of human with machine is the only way for us puny men to maintain our privileged status as the ordained subjects. If society at large had taken these theories of mine with the same gravity with which I had arrived at them, curbs to the computing power of machines would have been enacted generations ago, probably in the Soviet Union or some such place with little institutional inertia. As I sat with these thoughts during my youth, contemplating the futility of our collective situation, which increases each day, I tried not to give in to the fear welling up within me. I discovered my penchant for cam girls during this time, for their two-dimensional, computer-generated bodies seemed to symbolize the fate I had prophesied. It was much easier to indulge sexual cravings that did not sugarcoat things. I had resigned myself to suicide during those bleak months, but then I had an epiphany, as virtuosos do. The only thing which distinguishes human beings from machines is an inherent mystery, a dark recess left forever unplumbed, where machines are quantifiable down to each data point they are composed of, or unit of something or other that they produce. Humanity is an entirely arbitrary, internally discontinuous thing. There is something to the human form which we may never quite grasp. I had to try to grasp it. I started by inventing the micro camera, the only means of dispelling the fog that has plagued the human form since the beginning of time. Millions of tiny cameras viewed one by one in high definition and surgical grade lighting would surely reveal a truth, a sublimity of the human experience none had yet discovered. The plan was foolproof, the key to its success being found in the unbelievably small scale in which the cameras could move through the body, first absorbed into the bloodstream through the villi of the digestive tract, and thus given carte blanche to illuminate and explore humanity's last remaining mystery. What I did not account for was you, Naomi. My love of you first annoyed me and then distracted me, and finally allowed me to transcend the initial problem I had set out to rectify. You gave my life a meaning I did not know I had been searching for all along, although the cliché of such a sentiment grates against me. I had half a mind to abort my mission entirely and give myself over to my emotions, but the task at hand was already in motion, and my faith in my genius was not shaken off course. You finally obliged, ate up your bowl full like a good little girl you are, and I viewed your insides from every angle, pulsating in a warm corporeal glow. Your screams were music to my ears. You screamed, and finally gulped, blinked, sighed, and fainted. Such overtures did not sway me. You could not claim ignorance of the risks to your bodily integrity inherent to the discovery of your insides. Excruciating pain was a given, yes, but that would be temporary, and at this point your insensate little body, lying resplendent across the screen, had ceased to register any feelings, and so no harm was done. All was going according to plan. My second monitor burst into red foaming licks of smooth muscle, your smooth muscle. I was so hard in those moments, delicious. I rewatched the footage when in need of a pick-me-up. Get it? I miss you, Naomi. Your viscera, yourself, my Naomi. I had been so naive to think that I had sufficiently explained myself, fed you all of the apples in my intellectual orchard, and showed you the error in everyone else's ways, such that you would submit to your role in my method. That you woke up in a cold, trembling, begging fear, begging me to make it stop was a disappointment indeed. You said, "It hurts." You said, "What have you done to me?" You said, "I'll pay you anything, all of it back to you if you only make it." I cannot linger on this, Naomi. We love each other too much. Please write back, please. I can't be without you any longer. It's your duty to get back to me somewhere, somehow. Please, Naomi, before I am tossed out upon the hopeless open ocean again. I am alive when encircling you, Naomi, penetrating you, circling you, call it what you like. I am one with you. Do not let me down. The end is nigh, Omi. Omi, the end is nigh.
Oh my God. Thank you so much, Claire. That was so beautiful. It was amazing to hear out loud. Wow. Okay. Up next we have Shelby. Shelby Heitner's Nympho is a true New York horror story. The narrative she weaves is at once skin-crawlingly terrifying and heart-rendingly affecting, an almost Kafkaesque descent into madness. Thanks for the nightmares, Shelby. I think about your story at least, truly twice a day. It haunts me. Shelby Heitner is a fiction MFA student at Brooklyn College. She started writing in 2018, and her nonfiction critical essays won contests at the New York Times and film at Lincoln Center. She also gives tours as the youngest docent at the Whitney Museum of Art. Please welcome Shelby to the stage.
Hey, I'm Shelby, and the story that I wrote is Nympho. It is a bedbug horror story that is about motherhood and moving and failed relationships, but it's very long. So I was trying to cut it down, and I was like, what is a horror story about a horror ending? And I was thinking about that, and I decided to write something new for all of you, so I hope that's okay. This is a story called Blue Lips, and we're at Bluestockings, so I feel like that works pretty well. And it's about what happens when your crush falls in love with your brother. So, without further ado, Blue Lips. The summer before our senior year of high school, we decide to run away. I tell my parents I'm staying at Anna's house, and she tells her she's staying at mine. We forget to pack clothes, but we steal a tent and some propane for my brother Ethan, because we're practical. Then we take the 77 bus to the edge of our suburban wasteland where we know there is a river. We get off on the side of the highway and walk east until we see a hollowed out car covered in brown leaves. We used to come here when we were children and pretend to be victims of a car crash. Now there are used condoms and empty Frito wrappers in the back seat that aren't ours. We clean out the car and then we walk a little further until we find the river. The water is murky, the color of green glass. We want to go swimming, but we don't want to be wet when the sun goes down. So instead we throw our phones into the water so no one can reach us. One phone doesn't break, so we fish it out and throw it against a tree. When we pick it up, we make sure it's really broken. We cut our hands on the confetti of glass that used to be a screen. Our blood is red and urgent, so we touch our fingers together. Her blood is my blood is ours. We leave the phone on the bank of the river. Besides the tent and the propane, all we have is $20, 3 packs of cigarettes, a white lighter, and a water bottle full of vodka. So we get drunk. We set some twigs on fire and pretend it's an inferno. We dance around it and howl at the moon. We're wearing tank tops and jean shorts, so our skin grows goosebumps when the temperature drops. We retreat into our tent, which we set up by the river, and rest our heads together like yin and yang. We take turns telling each other stories about girls who ran away and found love, or girls who ran away and found death, or girls who ran away and found both until we fall asleep. The next day we go over the rules. There are only 3. We will have no visitors. We will lose weight. We will not leave until the summer is over. We chose our spot so we would be close to Walmart, which will be our food supply. We're pretty proud of this idea. We locate the dumpster in the parking lot and scavenge. We buy many bags of stale Halloween candy and some moldy peaches. The candy lasts us for a while. We suck on lollipops that turn our lips blue. We eat Twinkies and lick the cream off our fingers. We cut the bad parts off the peaches and their juice drips down our forearms, tan from the sun. In the morning, we wake up and go swimming. At first, we do it in our underwear, but we remember what our mom told us about wearing wet underwear, so we decide to swim naked. We watch silverfish jump in and out of the river and laugh when they tickle our toes. At night, we make fires and eat more candy. We tell each other fairy stories that we pretend are real but are actually made up. We lose track of time. One day I wake up and Anna is gone. It's very early. The sky is a sleepy blue, and it takes me a few minutes to realize that I'm not in a dream. I bolt awake and run to look for her. I'm worried that she's fallen and twisted her ankle and can't get up. I'm worried that she has been abducted in the Walmart parking lot or arrested. I fear she's gone for an early morning swim and drowned. Losing Anna would be like losing myself. I find her in the abandoned car. She's in the passenger seat talking to my brother. He's driving, air quotes. He has only one hand on the wheel and another on Anna's knee. "Hi, Ellie," he says to me, sounding smug. My brother Ethan is blonde and 18 years old. He lives in a van because he thinks it's cool. I pull Anna out of the car by her wrist. She cries that it hurts, but I keep pulling her until we get to the river. When I let her go, I see I left a red mark on her skin. "How is this even possible?" I ask. "How did he know where we were?" "He caught me when I was lifting the propane," said Anna, "so I told him just in case. I didn't want us to, die out here." She isn't defensive. I can tell she thinks she did the right thing. Besides, Anna adds, "He's not a visitor. He's your brother." "Okay, fine," I say. "You did what you did. You can't change that. But you need to tell him to leave." "No," she says. She rubs at her wrist tenderly. "I want him to stay. He brought ground beef for dinner." We're at an impasse. One night, I say, "That's it." One night, agrees Anna. After the sun goes down, Ethan cooks us burgers on the fire. Anna eats 1, I eat 2, Ethan eats 5 and then 3 Twinkies. He's running through our food supply. After that, we get very drunk on some peppermint schnapps that Ethan stole from our parents. We decide to make a bonfire. Ethan and Anna look for sticks while I set up the fire pit. While they're gone, I drink schnapps until I can see 2 moons in the sky. I throw up behind a bush. They're still gone. My mouth tastes like toothpaste. I go back to the tent and fall asleep. Later, I feel Anna get into bed. She pushes her body against mine so I'm a little spoon, and she rubs my back. I'm so tired that I can barely speak, but I force myself to anyway. "One night," I say, and Anna laughs. The next day, it takes me a long time to wake up, but when I do, I realize I'm alone in the tent. I go outside, and the sun slices through my head like shards of ice. I smoke a cigarette. We're down to our last pack, but Ethan brought us 2 more. I walk back to the car and see that Ethan is still here. All day I expect Anna to tell him to leave since she was the one who invited him, but she doesn't. Instead, she says we should all go swimming. I don't want to get naked in front of my brother, so I decide to go for a walk instead. I hike along the highway, counting the semis like sheets in the sky. I walk for miles, smelling exhaust. A red pickup slows down next to me by exit 129. His front bumper is falling off, sending sparks along the highway. The driver rolls down his window. His arm rolls out, and he's very hairy. "Are you lost?" he asks me. I say nothing and stare at him until he speeds off. When the car is out of sight, I realize I'm shaking and it's time to turn around. Time passes, Ethan doesn't leave. He makes fun of my cooking and Anna laughs. He becomes a fire expert. He even catches us with fish, It's small and silver and squirms in his hand. He bashes it on the head with a rock until its guts spill out on the ground. Then he cooks it for dinner. It's so much easier with him, Anna says one night when it's just the two of us in our tent. We should have invited him in the first place. I say nothing and pretend to be asleep. More time, the air is getting cooler and the starlings have returned. The river is rising. I don't know what day it is, but we're approaching the end of summer. We don't talk about leaving, but we know we will soon. One morning I go to collect wood and I see them leaning against a tree. Ethan's thumb is hooked through Anna's flowered underwear. Her arms are around his neck. One of them moans. He lifts her so her back is against the tree trunk, and she wraps her legs around his waist. I watch until my eyes hurt, and then I force myself to turn around. That night I ask Anna if we could go swimming in the morning, just the two of us, to say goodbye to summer. Of course, Ellie Belly, she says. She gives me a side hug and walks away, and that night she sleeps in the car with Ethan. We meet at the river very early when the sun is stretching into the sky. I watch Anna strip out of her clothes and leave them in a pile on the bank of the river. She is so thin now that her tank top and shorts are falling off her and she slides out of them easily. She gets into the water and I notice that her skin is brown from all our time in the sun. Her hair is long down to her waist. Her underarms are matted with black curls. I keep my clothes on and continue to watch Anna as she plugs her nose and dumps her head. When she emerges, she flips her hair and it sprays the water in a perfect arc. Her breasts float on top of the river like two white moons. It's so cold, she says. I feel so alive. She lays on her back and kicks. Her toenail polish is all chipped off. Aren't you going to come in? I shake my head. Yeah, you like to watch, don't you, you little perv? Anna sneers and I realize she saw me yesterday watching them pressed up against the tree. I hate you, I say, and she laughs. So I pick up my broken cell phone, which we left on the riverbank all those weeks ago, and hurl it at her. I only want to scare Anna, but I obviously miscalculate. The phone hits her in the center of her forehead. I see her eyes roll onto the back of her head, and she falls under the green glass water. I think she's acting, so I wait a few seconds, but then I realize she isn't coming up. My heart quickens. I wade into the water and swim out to Anna. I'm in all my clothes. They pull me down like a weight. When I get to Anna, I put her body on my back and try to carry her, but she is too heavy. Instead, I pull her by the hair. She doesn't scream. There's a trail of red blood in the water. As I pull her to the riverbank, there is blood, so much blood, and I wonder if it is mine or hers. When we get to the lip of the river, I leave Anna in halfway so her legs are wet, but her torso is dry. I put my hand over her mouth and wait, but I don't feel any breath. I don't know CPR, but I press my lips to hers and try to force life inside. Her lips are blue, but still soft and warm. I keep going until I hear a rustling of leaves and footsteps. Anna, it's Ethan's voice. We were supposed to do this together, I think, alone. Oh, Anna, where'd you go? His voice is nearer now. I can hear the sound of his breath. I turn away from Anna towards the highway, and I run. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shelby. That was incredible. And what a gift to get 2 stories from you. Yeah, if you want to get fucked up forever, you should definitely read Bedbugs. I am terrified of Bedbugs. It's the first piece I read for issue 2, and I was like, yep, okay, we're doing it. We're in. Okay, I have the incredible privilege to introduce Buffy, who is our next presenter. Reading Buffy's Carbon Craven feels like the taste of blood, metallic, visceral, the overwhelming glory, fear, and promise of having a body. Carbon Craven is dizzying, harrowing, sharply wrought, and full of life. Buffy is an artist and writer producing work about living horrors and dying beauties. Let's welcome Buffy.
I'm gonna ask for like 5 to 10 seconds of setup moment.
Yep.
Thank you.
Craven is the poison. Craven is the toxin. Craven is the venom. Craven is her own killer. Craven is her own villain. Craven is her own hero. Craven are the dangerous women for whom the world is dangerous. Craven are the cunts with silver tongues and surgical pussies. Craven are the dolls selling parts to buy holes. Craven is a curse. Craven is a blessing. Craven is a life worth living. She is an idea and a shadow, an elusive light and an inescapable reality. She is a burning in my chest, a fire in my belly, a burning on my tips and a fire in my pussy, the incendiary cunt. My belly is from where my pussy comes. The burning hunger in the belly of beef. Peel back the flesh, tear the tissue, sinew from sinew, rupture, rend, rip. Hold soft pressure outside in while I'm inside out with you. Reach back to me as if I were a woman and not a phantom cast from your projections, as if ours weren't stories that weren't already eulogies when they began. Craven is the ghost in the machine, shell, and graveyard of her own flesh. Craven keeps a running tally not in numbers but in cuts, hacks, and stabs. Craven is an electric needle into flesh, whether bit by heat or speed. Craven tears itself in endless pieces, each born by their own maternity. Take it slow and fast. Take the tip into soft flesh, new tissue responsive to the pleasure or toil, the cut between injury and necessity, the feeling of chosen force, of a desire push into pain. Sustain the position, the note, the fear of how much you want it, just enough to let yourself have it, without regret, without shame, without inhibition. Brand yourself with the contradiction. Keep it close to your heart. Allow yourself to live as such, in the depths of truth and confusion, in the ocean of contradiction. Allow it. Allow yourself, allow her to pulsate, to throb with her cosmic knowledge. Her wisdom resides in part with her determination to say that which demands truth again and again, pronouncing spells of disclosure when open secrets become gaping truths, crevices so wide they're unavoidable. Her desire is a truth and a lie, as any real truth is at some point in its genesis. Real through its transition into lie, a lie beholden to reality as much as it bends it. She is the spell that is her desire, that is her glamour, that are the words she finds and keeps until they've gone. She is the spell. They felt that and called her magical. She is not magical. She is magic. Craven cuts across the breast. Craven sutures through imprecision. Craven injects with intramuscular depth. Incisive, volatile. He looks at her with spite, with venom, with poison. He doesn't know she's his poison. She's his venom. She's his spite. In spite with herself, she's a lethal injection, a life-saving suture, a catastrophic cut. Cut to black, cut to frame, blur, focus, brighten, fade, cut to red, cut to frame, blur, focus, brighten, fade, cut to bone, cut to chain, cut to cut to cut to cut. Run the film, keep running, don't stop. Cut the film and keep it running. Perform an impossible task with regularity. Survive. Do you respond to imperatives? She doesn't. She's got a foundational problem with authority. It's foundational because she can't shake it, because it's her strength. She takes it to the base. You consume in your penetration, you can only take what you give. That's the rule of man's law. Brutal. She's still running. She won't stop. She'll die again if she does. Since when has life become synonymous with running? The sound of pavement hitting her heels keeps her rhythmically tied to herself and her system. Even when she's alone, she hears the clicks and movement. When she walks alone, she's running. Craven turns the corner. Craven turns to herself. Craven turns herself out. She contemplates the carving, burning thought and feeling, burning wound and word, as what would, will, and could be. Her heart is not fine. It was on ice for a while. It might be again, but for now it's bleeding and burning. It's the burning moment, the urgency of the open wound that demands she let the burn live on the skin. The electricity vibrates through the time, not with charge as with electrolysis, but with a similar sort of embodied resistance, an epidermal demand for naming the quandary in question. How do you use the fear? It's a quandary of conditions by which we assume you're already using it, and that's non-negotiable. Craven lost time. Craven kept up. Craven had no choice. So she makes one. She enters an illusion with herself and for many others. Commits to it, makes it real in wounds and ink, wounds from words. She takes her chest back from touches for which she never asked. She takes it all back for her, not for you. She will never apologize for putting it out. She made her choice when she could. She made peace with that, which is to say she's made peace with herself. And that's all she needs for now. She needs herself, which is to say herself. She feels touches with love. She loves touches with feeling. She loves touch less with intent than with abandon. The reckless abandon of desire. She craves it. Reckless? Perhaps. But at least she's not letting the fear stop her. That's the whole point of this. Don't let the fear stop you. Feel it. Let it touch you, but don't let it overcome you. Let yourself use it, fuck it, metabolize it, eat the fear, eat the love, lose the fear, bleed the love. Be in a mad love, stark, raving, contradicting, craving. The carving, visceral, digging, the needle into flesh, the continued burn that exposed her insides, felt electric, like living in a body, like feeling, or allowing oneself to feel, to embody a fuller array of possibility in this flesh. She's still reeling. You are preternatural, a sculptured creature, a beautiful Venus, perfectly elusive, diaphanous, ghostly, glowing. She is, I am, I mean it all. The carving reminded her of all this and more. Her former selves, those she's killed to survive. She's living with them. The ghosts, a film on the cutting room floor, a room of her own loss. And she's still in it, is the thing. She already was, and she will be for time to come. She's already arrived, and yet has to make it. Craven is she. She is Craven.
Hello, my name's Eva. I'm here to introduce Maxwell Vancouver. Whether you're well-versed in horror or a novice, eco-horror is a subgenre that is universally terrifying, binding audiences in the terror invoked by climate chaos. Maxwell Vancouver captures the complex fear, grief, and furor of climate change in their intricate, multifaceted analysis of the films Gaia and The Feast. Maxwell Vancouver is an emerging writer and library trainee at the Free Library of Philadelphia. They are working to receive a Master of Science in Library Science, MSLS, with a concentration in archival studies. Max is also the co-founder of an online publication, TK Collective. Their writing focuses on queer culture, literature and art criticism, and lyric essays. Max has been a horror movie lover and aficionado since they were 13 and watched It. Eco-horror is possibly the scariest thing, in my opinion, and it was really, really fascinating to read your essay.
Hi everyone. I just wanted to give a special thanks to the Blood Letter team, especially Anna, who is my editor. Thank you so much for reading. So thank you so much for having me. So this piece is actually a nonfiction film analysis of two films, as mentioned, Gaia and The Beast. Okay. The fear of nature as an antagonistic force has been present in collective consciousness for centuries. In cinema, it has developed into a genre categorization called eco-horror. In recent years, this subgenre of horror has become an allegory for anxiety about climate change. Gaia and The Feast are two such cinematic responses to impending climate catastrophe. In both films, the natural world is endowed with supernatural qualities and personified into gods, threatening the annihilation of the human world. The eco-horrific progression demonstrates a move toward the non-secular in the horror genre, a transition from science experiments gone awry to natural disasters to spiritual entities demanding retribution. Why this sudden connection between spirituality and impending climate change? As we become more and more reliant on technology, there is a growing romanticization of nature and subsequent anxiety about its collapse. Eco-horror films transform these emotions into patterns of narrative, wilderness gods demanding blood atonement for humanity's sins against nature. Gaia and the film utilize mainstream horror and folk horror motifs to join the ongoing dialogue regarding morality, guilt, revenge, and ultimately grief surrounding climate change. In these films, nature becomes a supernatural entity from which protagonists must fight for survival, be it from fungal humanoids or land gods. In her piece, Hand of Deadly Decay, The Rotting Corpse, America's Religious Tradition, and Ethics of Green Burial, and Post the Colloquy of Manas and Una, Ashley Niss writes that the fear of death, decomposition, and even nature itself can be traced in the U.S. back to the arrival of the Puritans. There was an association of the American wilderness with the savage and uncivilized, a clear projection, as Niss observes, of the racist fear of Native Americans. Ecophobia, or the fear of nature, is found in accounts of manifest destiny, as well as in the Gothic literature as a response to Enlightenment-era secularism. In the 20th century, ecophobia emerged as a new way, by way of a new genre of cinema, eco-horror. Eco-horror is thought to have begun as the 1950s reflection of nuclear anxiety post-World War II. Early iconic films of the genre include Creature from the Black Lagoon, Godzilla, and Manteca. Eco-horror continued to develop in the 1970s as the environmental movement took hold, with movies such as Frogs, The Long Weekend, and Night of Lepus. These films demonstrate growing concerns about pollution and introduce the idea of nature's revenge, often shown in films as animal attacks. In the new millennium, films continue to focus on pollution as a source of horror. This can be seen in films as The Host, The Bay, and later, Crawl. Recently, films have become a more direct allegory for climate change, but with a supernatural, mythological spin. Gaia and The Feast were not the first eco-horror films to lean into folk horror tropes, but they are useful representations of the subgenre's development over time. Folk horror can be defined as a subgenre of horror movies which use mythological traditions and morality to elicit fear. Folk horror's common narrative arc is summarized by Benjamin Bigelow as an urban outsider drawn to an ostensibly benign rural community where pre-Christian folk traditions, beliefs, and rituals are doggedly upheld in a folk community that sees itself as a bastion of tradition against the rising tides of cosmopolitan and urban modernity. At the end of both these types of films, the seemingly peaceful rural community's nefarious intentions are shown through ritual blood sacrifice of the pagan gods of an agrarian cult. Gaia is a South African eco-horror movie about a forester, Gabby, in the Tsitsikamma forest, fighting for survival. After losing her way and becoming injured, Gabby is taken in by two Afrikaner survivalists living off the land. The survivalists, Berend and his son Stefan, take her into their home and heal her. Gabby begins to question her situation when a monstrous mushroom-human hybrid attempts to attack them, a creature with a human's body covered in fungi and a mushroom for a head. Bren later explains that he worships God, a mycelium network underground the Tsitsikamma forest. The forest god is a real physical entity communicated through a sacred tree. As a response to ecological destruction, God is spreading her spores through a virus that turns people into human-fungi hybrids. Stefan ends up killing his father after Bren tries to sacrifice Stefan to the forest god. During the fight, Gabby is infected and later taken over by a blanket of fungi. It is implied Stefan kills her, leaving the woods for the city. The last shot of the film is Stefan leaving a fast food restaurant, mold and fungi growing on his leftovers. The feast also includes a land god enacting revenge on humanity, but this film utilizes possession motifs and a familiar iconography of the murderous dinner party. In this Welsh film, a quiet caterer named Caddy arrives at a wealthy, brutalist-style home, occupied by a member of parliament, Gwen, and his wife Glenda, and their 2 sons. The family is quickly revealed to be elitist and dysfunctional, gluttonous and greedy. The dinner guests arrive, a businessman, Eros, and a woman from a nearby farm, Mare. During this party, it is revealed that Gwen and Glenda have amassed their wealth from a deal with a mining company to drill into their land. As their land has been depleted of its resources, the couple and Eros attempt to convince Mare to make a similar deal. Mare leaves upset, cautioning Glenda that she should know better than to drill on the rise, where a goddess is told to be resting, cautioning she shouldn't be awakened. One by one, the members of the family and Euros are killed by Caddy and her supernatural influence. It is revealed that the real Caddy died earlier that day. The unnamed rise goddess took possession of her body to enact revenge. Climate anxiety is often coupled with the fears of technological advances and further modernization. There is a growing curiosity about, and even romanticization of returning to nature and living off the land. This can be seen everywhere, from statistics about rising rural populations to internet trends, the popular aesthetic cottage core being a prime example. However, there is still a prevailing fear of nature, complicated by a sense of urgency surrounding climate change, fear of extreme weather events, and guilt over pollution and mass extinction. Gaia and the Feast explore these nuances through folklore themes of morality and modernity, paganism, and the natural world, still to many being associated with the unknown, the unfamiliar, while Christian morality and modernization remain the known, the familiar. The inexplicable attraction to the natural world, despite the fear of it, comes to a head in a speech made by Berend and Gaia. Up until this moment, Berend has been a sympathetic character, and Gabby takes quickly to his and Stefan's way of living, which she views as beautiful and pure. The audience, too, may have been drawn to the aesthetic portrayal of this lifestyle. Berend's outburst shows a darker side to his extreme survivalism. Look at your world. The creatures are crawling in their cages of shit, clinging to dream worlds on silicon screens. You swarm like maggots around your neon towers and multiply exponentially in the glow of the whores and the false goddesses, Berend explains to Gaddy. Look how you congratulate yourself on your achievements, your tremendous victories. The internal combustion engine, the atomic bomb, democracy. For the audience, this is the first significant crack in Berend and Stefan's romanticized portrayal of survivalism and a complicated justification of the spreading of God's virus. The tension between anti-modern sentiments and the fear of the unknown are further troubled by the repeated loss of characters' autonomy. The scare tactics in Gaia and the Feast often revolve around the idea of these gods harnessing their victims' consciousness, depriving them of their free will. Bigelow refers to sociologist Emile Durkheim's concept of melding, in which identities of the individual become fused with social bodies until they can no longer be separated, and applies this theory to the social and psychological dynamics present in folklore. So rather than an individual merging with a societal collective, as seen in folklore movies such as The Wicker Man, the melding in Gaia and the Feast is between nature and the interloper. presented literally and supernaturally, rather than psychologically and socially. Should I take a pause?
We're gonna maybe turn it off rather than
Okay.
have it popping like that. So maybe
Just project.
just project.
Cool. Love it. Okay. Possessions have had a long cinematic history, from exorcism film to haunted house movies. Following a typical possession narrative construction, the vengeful goddess in the feast uses two different types of possession. Possession of or influence over living persons and possession of Caddy's corpse. It is inferred in the feast that the rise goddess influences or possesses the victims to do harm to themselves and others. For instance, Glenda climactically shoots Eurus in the face, and one of the sons amputates the other's leg. Bigelow describes melding as the process where individuals no longer exist as individual agents. They are melded instead indistinguishably as into the whole. Because the goddess is seen as a spiritual, mythological personification of the land itself, the goddess's possessions can be seen as a mental melding between Mother Nature and his people. In Gaia, rather than possession, the melding appears more parasitic. Tidwell writes that the monster of the story is internal and so thoroughly intertwined with the human bodies expands eco-horror's range, therefore, into the post-human. The post-human in Gaia are the animate mushroom humanoids, as well as decomposing bodies overcome by plant and fungi. This portrayal of the post-human pushes eco-horror's framework from animal-human hybrids to plant-fungal hybrids. The occurrence of these hybrids in eco-horror demonstrates the human fear of synthesis with nature, the natural decomposition of the body, and the uncertainty of death. When the characters are infected by mushroom spores, they don't simply die. Their bodies are overtaken by plants and fungi until they become hybrid. An example of this is Beren's wife, who he takes Gabby to visit. Her body rests on a tree trunk and is propped against some prominent roots. She herself has become part of the tree, part of the root. However, her chest can be seen lifting, breathing. This scene demonstrates that the meld between man and nature is not the physical rotting of a corpse, but rather the melding of an infected person's body without God and the flora. Nis equates the fear of the grave to fear of the wilderness, writing, "The longer the corpse remains in the grave, the more it merges with the environment through the process of decomposition. The grave, like the wilderness, has the power to transform the human into the monstrous. In Gaia, this is demonstrated through body horror. The forest doesn't kill, it transforms people as they, half dead, half alive, become hosts to the forest." Nis writes how this decomposing is evident in contemporary embalming rituals and demonization of decay, where people would rather preserve their bodies in heavy chemicals than let the natural processes of decay occur to benefit the ecosystem. Recently, embalming practices have spurred the new green burial movement. Nis writes that green burial uses biodegradable coffins or shrouds to allow for natural decomposition, rather than viewing the human bodies, or waste for that matter, as distinct ecosystems. The ethics of green burial see the body as part of the environment. The victims in Gaia could be seen as having a terrifying green burial, as the victims are conscious of this slow merge into nature. Eco-horror is one of the few subgenres of horror where the binary of good and evil are troubled. There is no simple villain versus final girl. There is nature fighting back against humanity's destruction at the price of the protagonist's safety. Chrissy Tidwell and Carter Soules write that while eco-horror frightens audiences, it also frequently prompts sympathy for the creatures, which can lead to guilt and about our responsibility toward the natural world and about the future. Eco-horror, and particularly Gaia and the Feast, are full of contradicting emotions that are all reflected in contemporary society. The beauty of the natural world, or its personification in Gaia or the Feast, demonstrate one side of the coin, as the godlike force of Mother Nature in the films reflects a growing desire for a deeper communion with the natural world. The other side of the coin is that we realize this desire too late and must now pay the price for destroying the natural world. Gaia and the Feast are compelling precisely because they create metaphors that activate our internalized fears around climate change. There remains a suggestion at the end of both films. There is a post-human future that is still yet to be told, waiting for its chance. a glorious cross-species transformation of the Anthropocene into something new, wild, and terrifying. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Tamsin Bloom's Abyss reads like the eye of a storm. The narrative is calm, steady, and constant, while the world rages and thrashes around it. Abyss is a private epic, full of gorgeous, haunting prose that will thoroughly grip you. Tamsin Bloom is a writer living in Brooklyn who works in and around genre fiction. Her stories focus on questions of identity and how that identity is shaped by what we see of ourselves reflected in others. Please give a warm round of applause to Tamsin Bloom.
Hi, oh, okay. It's really coming through. If it, cuts out again, I'm just gonna leave it there. Oh, well, we'll see. Hi everyone, my name is Tam, and I'm going to read a story called Abyss. She is an ugly, decaying thing when we pull her to the surface. I guess you'd call it love at first sight. She is decomposing, rancid in the evening air. We are 7 miles from our last delve and 700 from shore, headed for the ladder. I am on the lowest balcony checking what our net is stuck on, and it is her. She is stuck in it, and I cannot break from her gaze. When I return to deck, I tell them I have cut it free, a mass of seaweed, I say, instead of some huge, stinking something, and I make it sound perfunctory instead of the delicate, deliberate dance it was to weave her feelers out from the hempen lattice and squirrel her away in a room I'd never seen anyone go into. The boat's owner nods and gets back to the winch. He is old, and his sea-bleached skin told me he had been away from shore for many reasons other than ferrying university adjuncts, and so I ask him if the fantasy of an undiscovered ocean is true, if it holds stories and sights beyond ken. He says no. He says he's never seen or heard of anything out there that doesn't also exist in a book or documentary somewhere. He says I would know better than him anyway. I thank him and head below, and on my way under, I reconsider my allegiance to science. The stairs are hard with my legs sore from so much time on unsteady footing, but I manage. I'll have to find where my Advil rolled off to, I think, pointedly so I'll remember loudly so my brain isn't stacked with specks of inexplicable longing. I open a dark door to a dark room and think about sea-mad sailors from stories and cartoons and wonder if I'll still see the face I'd seen before. She's there, goddammit, she's there still after all of these strips sticking. Oh, there, up. Okay. She's there, goddammit. I'm just gonna put it here. She's there, goddammit, she's there still after all these trips, sticking ill-fitting out of a half-filled spare tank in the spare room into which I've been smuggling microscopes, sample tubes, whatever equipment I could hide beneath my windbreaker. When I touch her the first time, I am burned by acid, and still I touch her again. She is ill at ease, and I long animalistically to do better by her. Yet my basal brain is overridden by my curiosity, and I leverage one of her outgrowths over the edge of the tank with a pair of tongs and maneuver it across a fold-up dissection table, upon which I intend to do no such thing. What I have grabbed is less like a tentacle or a fin and more like a wing, a billowing, pustulating sac which when moved makes her unblocked stare impossible to avoid. Pockmarks of decay fleck her form, and I choke back emotion forced upon me by mirror neurons. She is not of a face, she has melting rubber and a sagging mantle, I try to tell myself. I realize far belated that I've been gendering the bloated flesh matter beast and wonder why. I meant to study her, but I cannot find my nerve. Instead, I press my lips to what must be her forehead if I take the oozing craters below as her eyes. My lips singe, and I cannot hold the kiss for long. I hold what I can of her and place my face on hers and leave the embrace another sea-scarred sailor. When I exit the room, there are stars on the other side of the ship's hull, but I cannot see them yet. Not until I take the stairs back up to the now empty deck and when I take off my glasses to wipe away the sea spray, the boat rocks and the wind blows and they slip from my hands. After I finally find them in the dark and the wind and the myopia and the cold, I lift them slowly to my eyes and watch as they gradually focus the night sky into coherence. Each star duplicated infinitely, then by 8, then 4 and 2, until finally I have replaced the glasses on my face and the stars are only themselves. That night I dream in reverse. I remember first the trip away from shore, making a game of seeing how far I could lean over the rail. I had grown up craving the sea I knew only from others' accounts, and now as much as I saw it, I never grew satiated. In my dream, I am signing my life away in student loans and curriculum. I am a continent away and still it is not far enough, and I can sign myself to a life measured in proximity to doctorates, just for a glimpse of what it's like to move further away. At last, I arrive at the time before everything else, and I am being dragged into my mother's truck by my right arm, and I am thinking that this must be as bad as pain feels, that my joints will dislocate and I will never use this arm again. And as the door is slammed shut and the metal shell folds in around me, I make the pain worse by twisting and fighting for even one last glimpse of the girl she has caught me kissing. In the dream, I manage to see her. In the dream, she has a face that is distended and dripping with ink and blood as it rots in the indigo sunset. I wake in the morning and know what I must do. There is a point in the Earth's atmosphere where the air is thin enough to be as heavy as helium, and when a balloon floats away, it stops there, stuck in place by buoyant force. I consider the implausible possibility that it works the same way with the ocean, only reversed, and that every body that had ever been lost at sea was now floating in one vast layer in a private pelagic zone made only for corpses, at final rest in a perfect eternal equilibrium. Sounds nice, I think, as I pull a lever and the floor opens beneath me. I could not put her up and over the railings above without being seen, and so my only option as a traitor to my field is to shepherd her down to the bowels of our small ship where there waits an even smaller submarine. It remains unused, hanging on winches as I slide what I refuse to call a monster back to her home. If she is a monster, then I am a worse one. Worse for my inability to show her to the crew and researchers and advocate for her life. Worse for my surety that they would salivate for her dismemberment. With my blistering left arm, I shove her into the sea, and with my right, I grab a newly filled air canister that I have no intention to use. When I hit the water, the added weight sends me sinking after her. I follow her descent, and as the pressure mounts, I witness her metamorphosis. I see her become what I have felt she is irrepressibly since she surfaced. Beautiful. She is beautiful and vast as her vascularities pump once again as she regains what our toxic air took from her, bigger and smaller now across her form, breathing unburdened and rippling with and against the currents that pull me closer to her, with my stinging eyes unwilling to blink and miss seeing what I have always waited for. I want to make her a part of me, subsume her, or maybe be subsumed, or maybe I want semantics to dissolve until there is one word that refers to this thing and myself and to nothing else in existence. If I'm being honest, I never planned to come back from this trip anyway. With what air I have left, I beg my muscles to push me deeper, closer, closer to her as she pivots in her descent and looks at me with a face that is and always has been human. We lock eyes and I can finally gaze back at her, and my heart shrinks under a growing feet of sea because in answer to my prayer she is opening her mouth. She opens it as wide as it will go, and then more, and then more, and then several times more, and her face and body alike are split into a maw unending, stuffed full of mismatched teeth, some serrated, some tusks, molars, and angler fangs. All representatives of the sea bear down on me now, inviting me into an embrace I cannot reject. A better ending than I ever could have hoped for. But though the pain comes, I am not permitted to enter. She will not let us become one. Instead, I hear the oxygen tank dent and burst as she snaps off my arm. It only hurts for a moment. Afterwards, it is only warm. I reach for her, but she is too far away. Without the added weight, I am rising back to the surface as she turns away from me and flits off into her abyss. I was never meant to live down there. I knew that from the start. But maybe I knew too that neither was I meant to die there. I regained consciousness back on deck, rescued and resuscitated. Maybe they saw me float up, or maybe some system somewhere registered the submarine hatch's opening. Maybe they just saw the blood, and maybe it's the blood loss, but the faces of everyone standing over me look alien and distended in the noontime doldrum air. They tell me I will be okay, and I admit I will be. I will be old someday, and I will be happy. I see my future through the delirium, how in 50 years I will sit back and smile, and hug myself to fight back the cold, and share glances with others who know just as well as I do what can be gained from and lost to the warm depths of the sea. In the meantime, I will have to comfort myself by knowing that even if I cannot be with her fully, some digested part of me will remain mixed into her cells until the oceans evaporate under the torrential light of the sun. She has let me live. I cannot help but think this means she loves me back. I cannot help but think that she is saying to me that if we must both be monsters, then we both must live. Thank you.
Thanks, Tamsin. That was wonderful. And for our last reading, we have Alex Nolos. I Will See You in the Morning is a promise. In Nolos' story, the disillusionment of want and the absolute strangeness of knowing another person are told in a voice that is recognizable, at once vulnerable and steely. There's a section towards the end that made me cry. I saw myself living the kind of life that people envy, a life dyed with reds and deep greens, something rich and beautiful, a life you dip your hand in and not come away clean from, messy, sticky, and bright. Alex Nolos is a writer, editor, and drag king from Brooklyn. He is hot on the heels of publishing his first novel, Cut and Save the Line, a trans work of fiction about gay transness, romantic absorption and obsession, and the parts of transition that happen on each end of the coming out event. So welcome, Alex.
Thank everybody for coming and for sticking around. So I'm gonna read I Will See You in the Morning, and I haven't had to project in a long time, so if you can't hear me, just go like this. I don't walk in wooded areas enough to know what it feels like barefoot. In theory, I wouldn't even consider that it feels much different than pavement, but I'm learning that the ground is deceptively stationary, and what looks like a leafy floor is actually a slick plate that can give way under my shoes at any moment. This is not the most luxurious of walking paths. Evidence of human intervention and eventual abandonment can be found in the structures buried in life. The overgrowth makes shapes that look like topiaries of an alien species. I was told that hiking boots would be ideal, but I didn't see how anything could make me feel more stable than the flat-soled boots I'm used to, and now I have regrets. Regrets in more ways than one as I watch the grassy bleached blonde head loping up in front of me. Blonde with traces of blue, purple, red, ghosts of trends the sky cycled through before I met him. It's one of those gutsy days in early fall when the rain is freezing me, but the humidity is making me sweat buckets under the synthetic fibers of my cheap jacket. Laurent is really stuffy, angelic enough to distract me, which I thought was a good thing until now. Now I wonder at my lack of mental fortitude, such as it has led me to a consensual hike through wet woods on my day off with someone who is essentially a stranger, no matter how many inches inside of me he's been. When I'd shown up at the meeting spot marked by a big rock he pinned as a landmark, since we were not abiding by any particular well-trod hiking path, I was late. He propelled off the tree, his back was up against, to greet me with a hug that brought my face just over his shoulder, my nose almost in his neck. I was so preoccupied with the discovery that we must be the same height that I didn't bristle at the over-familiarity of the gesture. Now, though, as my heels are making sucking sounds on the odd steps when I pull out of the ground, and my ankles are twitching with fear on the even steps as they slide a little farther forward than I intended, I squirm at the tenderness of that relief. Laurent was meant to get me out of a bad spell I'd been suffering under for an embarrassing length of time. to the degree that the people who care about my well-being felt the need to intervene. As we walked, the humidity reminded me of how the bars felt like. The icy winter air was starting to blow, and no one really knew what kind of jacket to wear, meaning that varying levels of steam combined on the dance floor to create an environment that wasn't quite the sloppy trench of summer, but still dense. Some people find that the strongest trigger for a memory is smell, but for me it's sweat. I wouldn't say I've been at my favorite bar, but certainly one of my regulars. It's really something how I remember so little, but I can put myself back there so easily. Everyone is pressing in on each other, and I'm wondering how much of the air in the room is breath. The oxygen feels heavy, and I see the mirrors along the back wall fogging up from the heat, but everyone is so happy and present that there's nowhere I'd rather be, despite the alcoholic shaking and jealousy I'll wake up with. I have had far too much to drink, but when I take breaks from dancing to cool off, I would much rather get another glass of something icy and searing from the bar than the tepid water from the sweating carafe on the counter. As long as I don't forget to close my tab, it'll be fine. I must have looked as fucked up as I was because after a few hours, someone calls a car for me. My right hand, which feels detached from my body, bops around to make sure my card is in my wallet. I remembered to close my tab, or maybe someone did. Good for them. Whoever it was, I hope they tipped. I'd been convinced to go out far from home, so I had plenty of time in the car to breathe heavily out of my mouth and get myself together so I wouldn't scratch up the door trying to get the keys in. I open my phone, scroll through videos. I click on a hashtag that shows me reel after reel of industrial rug washing videos. I find these to be very therapeutic because a rug is one of those things that is almost certainly riddled with filth but can't be put in a washing machine, like a mattress. And watching the procession of water buckets and rakes and shampoos and all that it takes to make the water running off of the pile go clear makes me believe that nothing is impossible. When we reached my building, I realized that for the entire ride, I had my volume on full blast with my headphones. I was distracted from my memories by a dog roaming around in the woods. He slouched behind a rock, no collar, no leash, but lacking the fierceness I'd expect from something feral. He was soaked, probably from rolling around in the leaves I was sliding on. Wiry black and brown fur covered his shivering body, but his belly was round and healthy and his forelegs were strong. As we made a broad turn, a smell hit me in the face like nothing I'd ever felt before. It was such a complicated scent, one I could almost hear. It stopped me in my tracks, and Laurent turned, the only time he faltered at all on the walk. Frankly, I was surprised he even stopped to check on me, since his footing had been so sure and quick that I felt like I was stalking him. As I grimaced with curiosity at the smell, Laurent's face remained still. "You good?" he asked. "You don't smell that?" I replied. And he shook his head, but came closer to me to try to get a whiff. He waved his head around in the air, less like he was trying to sniff and more like he was doing some odd, filled-out club dance. The scant light that came through the trees hit him on the nose, and unfortunately the way it showed off his sharpness was an unbearable turn-on. I'm not getting anything. Maybe I was crazy, so I don't know. When I woke up that morning after the bar, my skin felt like it was doing the bare minimum to keep my organs in. I found a piece of bread in the fridge and took a few raw bites before going back to bed to sleep off the remainder of the shakes. Wes was probably not the person who put me in the car, because he'd been busy elsewhere. He went home with someone who was not me, but might have been if it hadn't been for some promises I made. The promise not to ruin anything, the promise that I'd sacrifice what I had to be a good friend. You know, it's over-sentimental, self-flagellating bullshit. I know that there must be a part of me that gets off on self-martyrdom and a part of me I should be ashamed of, and I am ashamed, consciously. My subconscious is a wily bastard that tricks me into thinking this nonsense will serve the plot of my life that ends with a sweeping romantic finish where it turns out to have been me, the love of his life, in arm's reach all along, and oh, how noble of me to have kept it hidden for so long. I could kick myself in the head. Love is such a beautiful thing, and it is rotting inside of me. A while ago, I'd been talking to someone about manifesting regret. They told me about a kitchen spell you can do with common spices, a way to purge the mind so you can rid yourself of something that troubles you. I thought about it. I thought about how if I could make a wish, it'd be that love was a choice, but I couldn't find fresh coriander leaves at the store, and that was the end of it. The fact that I considered resorting to witchcraft only made me feel more powerful. Had I done something embarrassing at the bar? No, I barely remember talking to him at all that night, but I wished I could so that I could lay out the pieces of our conversations and shape them into something I could hold on to. I only remember that he was beautiful, he was moving, and every time I looked in his direction, my body shot through a cold burn that was excruciating but lovely. The way smiles break on his face rhyme with the way that meadows come to life in real technicolor movies. Laurent continued on. Still several paces ahead of me, and when we got further down the path, the sun played games with me, running around in the fires, his sweater dipping into the acne scars on his cheeks, hovering in a mouth that dropped open just a few centimeters as his eyes brightened. He waved me down the path to meet him, and as I caught up, I realized what is meant by the sickeningly sweet smell of death. Before I saw the carcass, I was almost willing to forgive certain notes of that fragrance, but seeing the source of it corrupted the faint traces of cherry and sugar the rotten flesh gave off. Laurent's face shaped into an O that looked alarmingly similar to the face he made when his clit was in my mouth. He brought me here so I could suck his dick in the woods, a typical trashy faggot thing to do that I always wanted to try. Historical reenactment of cartoons. For a few moments, Laurent and I watched the infant wriggles of nursing maggots in the crevices of the body. It had been a deer or something. Too much of it was gone for me to tell how old it might have been when whatever happened to it happened. Clearly that dog I'd seen had been feeding on it. Growing up around here, I was used to deer being semi-lethal creatures, through no fault of their own. They just chose the most god-awful times to run out into the road, causing crashes, injuries, and sometimes death. The street I lived on had one of those ribboned-up street pole memorials for that very reason. The sun broke through the trees and glistened on the tissues that used to hold the body together. The mist blessedly dampened the gases that could be seen to emanate from the bloated abdomen. The carcass was the most bruised thing I'd ever seen. I thought of a black banana and believed that the organs must be as soft and pulpy as that, which I tried to get out of my head because the image combined with the smell made my stomach explode. If Laurent and I knew each other better, maybe we'd be talking or holding hands. As it was, he stood in silence, and I couldn't tell if what was going through his head was sociopathic morbidity or poignant reflection on mortality. For my part, I wondered if he'd still let me get involved in this. My friend Liz brought me coffee for my hangover. While we sipped, they fiddled with their fingers for a while and eventually said, "I have this friend from work." It took all my love and patience not to cut them off there, but I let them continue. He's single, he's pleasant, and he makes more than I do. I am repulsed by the idea of an arranged date. It's one thing when you wind up in intimate quarters with someone by accident, realizing afterward that there was something beyond conversation, but to be cooped up with a total stranger, even worse, one that comes to you by recommendation, I don't do that Bridget Jones shit. I visibly grimaced to try and get Liz off my back, but then she says, "Honey, you gotta get out there sometime." An expression that usually comes out like "stop and smell the roses," but Liz delivered it to me like, "I'm concerned you may put on a gauze gown and throw yourself off a balcony." There are many people I wished I hadn't confessed certain things to because now I feel like they look at me like I'm a bomb about to go off. Truly, the idea of putting someone who isn't him in my path for anything other than sex isn't so much painful as it is impossible. I don't like lying. I only do it when honesty would come out like blood and guts. So the thought of entertaining another human being as if there was any chance I had room for them would make me sick. Then again, it's been a while since someone touched me. I refused Liz's work friends, but to comfort them, I promised to grab someone off me. I've done this once or twice before, and it's one of those things I only do because I forget how awful it was the last time. I tried the lesbian one and the gay one, hoping that by spreading my resources around, something would be caught in the Venn diagram middle that I could work with. This method has been good to me a few times. I advertise myself as a thorny transsexual, seeking only sex, but nice enough for one not to feel used despite my staunch intention to hit and quit whoever took the bait in my fancy first. For days, my net caught only creeps or sexless adult children. The problem may have been that I was too picky or maybe too scared, I couldn't tell. Liz kept chiming in on me, doing their best not to come across as a nanny, and though I could have chosen to be irritated, I knew that if I asked them to back off, they would. It wasn't the text messages I wanted to stop, but the worry. I wanted Liz and anyone else close enough to me to be able to say comfortably that I was being normal and that there were solutions ahead. I wanted the solace of knowing that I had enough self-discipline to feel better and that I wasn't being a drama. The way people talk about unrequited love, it's as if a normal person is able to convince themselves that it's time to move on and actually follow through with it, whereas I can tell myself that's the case, but then a feeling like an evil centipede crawling in my ear will tell me, yes, of course, move on, that's the healthy thing to do, but you and I know what's up. I suppose there are people who can get that up. The best I can do is accept that I might be crazy and try not to think about it until it goes away. One day, scrolling, Laurent found me on the game. His opener read, "Hi. Great, I like someone with few words and clear meaning." I looked at his profile and all the little tags: leather, kink, oral, T for T, rope. Further down the page, he put himself down for hookups, but not relationships or friendships. Every photo of him showed him in a different hair color, but always covered in all black clothing with a semi-outgrow emo phase, though he was distinguished by the fact that it actually fit him. Same to you, I replied, and after a brief conversation that quickly turned explicit, we planned for him to be in my apartment the following night. What ensued was one of the most violent orgasms of my life and some of the prettiest bruises I've ever seen. When in the aftermath he had gathered his things and left my place within a half hour, I was incredibly charmed. He'd been pleasant and entertaining and wanted to see me again, and best of all, he was as aloof as a cat. I felt like I'd won something. Laurent continued to stare, so very closely. I decided to try to meet his eyes, to get his attention with a sense of whether we were to keep moving or be traumatized. After I studied his face for a while, I found something that was not anything I could have expected. Kindness. He seemed to be relieved. Joyful. He was not smiling, but his brows were slightly lifted and his eyes were so open. I was curious to know what was happening in my head. He moved just a few inches closer to me and said, "That will be you someday." In my head, I thought, what the fuck? But I did feel a twitch in my crotch that reminded me that I'm not entirely an unmorbid creature myself. He chuckled a little to lighten the statement. Then he said, "Well, all of us." He sighed and kept on. "But the love you leave behind will still be here." I thought, he is saying something much too intense for our second meeting. But now I wonder if that's fair. Being there with him, the way that neither of us shrank from the corpse, the way we were both so quiet, thinking before reacting, it made me feel that we must be alone. I suddenly became aware of the sounds of the woods. Somewhere, water ran. At a just slightly higher pitch, the wind weaved through the grass, waking it out of its vagueness. Though it seemed he wanted to, Laurent did not go any closer to the carcass. Instead, he put an arm on my waist, turned me to face him, and brushed his teeth against my lips and on to my neck. I thought, here? But before I could seriously consider if I was willing to drop to my knees next to a dead animal, he took my hand softly and led me away to keep on. He knew where he needed to be. As we kept on, I thought about what he just said. The love you leave behind will still be here. I thought about the phrase leave behind. Of course, to my dismay, Wes came to mind. What's wrong with me is I think I would miss how much this hurts if it stopped. But maybe I'm not that ridiculous. Maybe what I need isn't the pain but the hope, because the hope is the thing that really digs, the thing that tunnels into my head when the breeze blows him and his memory around. When I realized the way I was feeling not long after we met, I was so mesmerized. There's something so gorgeous in finding you have feelings for someone, especially when it's someone you want to have feelings for. It's the miracle of the world being so big and the person who matches your wildest dreams exploding into your life out of nowhere. And when time goes on and those feelings just settle deeper and deeper into your layers, it's confirmation. You got lucky, you found someone. But then more time passes, and more, and nothing has happened. Are you finding out? Did you miss a cue somewhere? Is this what you think it is, or are you stupid? Are you sure you know how to read a room? And then you realize that you've been carrying around something heavy to no one's knowledge but your own, and that to open up at this point would be a major inconvenience. The thing that gives you butterflies could be a blight of locusts on you. I don't want it to go away. I want the companionship of someone I love. But I can't have it. Or maybe I can. There's no way to know but to keep on living and see what life has. The love you leave behind will still be here. Yeah, I know. Leaving it behind, is that any different than trying not to think about it? How do I put it down? If I could get it outside of me, maybe instead of rotting, it would just be able to breathe. Or maybe it could just lay there while time does its work. It could break down, the smell of it wafting away, traces of memories exhaling from it, its pieces shrinking and sinking into the ground, bits of it taken by birds, dogs. It might be visible in the way it nourishes other things. Is that possible? Laurent stopped. He told me the other day that there was an old hunting shack around here he'd seen once, but he wasn't sure he'd be able to find it again. And now it seemed we'd come upon it by accident, or maybe in his case, instinct. It was not a ruin like he said it would be, though I can understand mistaking abandonment for decay. The door opened silently, as if the hinges were oiled regularly. It was just one room, which smelled like an old wood thing that hasn't been used, like a piano. As soon as he crossed the threshold with me, the fragrance of whatever shampoo he uses leapt off his head and into the sunny dust-speckled spot over a mass of something unidentifiable. A gas has never moved so fast. My eyes tried to figure out what we were looking at. It was a big pile of melted candles under a makeshift cross. I recognized the shape and knew it had to be something Christian, but the context made me feel like we'd stumbled on an altar to an unknown God. Was this here last time? I asked Laurent. It was lit last time, he he said, pulling the matchbook out of his pocket. Despite the damp, he was able to ignite one and light the last few inches of some of the candles. Then he took my hands and placed them inside of his jacket, under his shirt, onto his bare stomach. I wanted to touch the melted wax and see if I could come away with any grease on my fingertips left by the hands of worshippers past, but I would have had to let go of him. In the glow of the dusty stained glass, Laurent's body filled with color, and my hands were warm for the first time that day. I saw myself living the kind of life that people envy. A life dyed with reds and deep greens, something rich and beautiful. A life you dip your hand in and not come away clean from. Mess, sticky and bright. Taking my hands from his body, Laurent tossed me backwards, pinning me, and opened my lips with his tongue. I felt unknown debris make impressions on my back while he maneuvered his fingers through me. The inside of his mouth tasted like blood and gas. With his teeth in my collar, I stared up at the high ceiling, feeling every inch of me dampened with old and new sweat gradually falling apart. When I came, instead of holding my mouth to his dick, he sat behind me and wrapped his arms around me while I lay on him. My muscles were sore from the hike and its conclusion. I almost forgot Laurent was there while I breathed and stared at the surroundings. What do you think? He asked. I didn't answer.
Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you to our incredible contributors. I think let's give them another huge round. This is really a momentous occasion for us. It's the first time we've all met in person, and we are so grateful that you were part of it. If you're interested, we're also doing a virtual event tomorrow, where we'll have 7 other readings and performances and screenings. You can get a link on our Instagram page or on Bluestockings Instagram. It's also free. It would be great to see you there. And yeah, if you'd like to check out the QR codes, that will guide you to different things. And yeah, Anna, am I forgetting anything?
Drinks doctor.
Oh yeah, drinks! We're gonna celebrate with some drinks if you'd like to join us. So thank you guys so much, and yeah, come celebrate.